On this episode of China Uncensored, Taiwan, Donald Trump's trump card. Hi, welcome to China Uncensored. I'm your host, Chris Chappell. Donald Trump has now been in office for... Okay, well, he's still a month away from assuming office, but he's already making... changes. Yes, turn and face the strain. Because for one, it looks like he might change 40 years of U.S. diplomatic policy in regards to Taiwan. Policy created in part to avoid having a war with China. On Sunday, Trump questioned the One China policy. That's a policy where both China and Taiwan agree that there's only one China, but disagree on which one that one is. And the U.S. has its own One China policy where it also agrees that there can be only one China. But unlike China's version, the U.S. doesn't recognize China's authority over Taiwan. Phew. You know what? Let's just call it the Highlander policy, for clarity. Anyway, let's recap. 2 weeks ago, Trump took a phone call from Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen. That's the first time in 40 years a U.S. president has spoken directly with a Taiwanese president, and that left many with mixed feelings. Not the Chinese regime, though. They were very clear on how they felt. But even though they consider Taiwan just a breakaway province, they decided to just play it cool with Trump. Agree to disagree.
There are indeed some disagreements and differences of opinion. This has been the status quo of U.S.-China relations.
Vice President-elect Mike Pence also said it wasn't a big deal.
The waters here seem like a little bit of a tempest in a teapot.
Well, now it's tea time.
I fully understand the One China policy, but I don't know why we have to be bound by a One China policy unless we make a deal with China, having to do with other things, including trade.
Here's what China's foreign ministry spokesman said in response.
There can be only one.
Or to quote him more accurately,
China has noted the report and expresses serious concern about it. Upholding the One China principle is the political basis for developing U.S.-China ties. If this basis is interfered with or damaged, then the healthy development of U.S.-China relations and bilateral cooperation in important areas is out of the question.
Expressing serious concern may not sound like the strongest language out there, but the Chinese Foreign Ministry always maintains an air of decorum and self-restraint. Because the Chinese regime has state-run Global Times to express how it really feels. Trump is as ignorant as a child, it says. And in response to Trump's provocations, Beijing could offer support, even military assistance, to U.S. foes, and may even start a war to retake Taiwan. Of course, the Global Times is like the New York Post of Chinese state-run media, so while amusing, we shouldn't read too much into what it says. It would be like freaking out every time a politician says something on Twitter. People in Trump's camp have balked at the idea of having to make concessions to the Chinese Communist Party. Stephen Moore, a former economic advisor to Donald Trump and chief economist of the Heritage Foundation, had this to say in a recent radio interview.
Too many mamby-pamby people in the foreign policy shop are saying, oh my gosh, we can't do this, we might insult the Chinese. Taiwan is our ally, John. That is a country that we have backed because they believe in freedom, and we ought to back our ally, and if China doesn't like it, screw them.
And despite what President-elect Trump says about the call with Taiwan being something he only heard about an hour before the call, reports from Trump's transition team seem to show the call was actually months in the making, thanks to lobbyists like former U.S. presidential candidate Bob Dole, who may have been paid by Taiwan. Meanwhile, the Taiwanese government has no comment on Trump's remarks. Taiwan is in a tricky situation here. Trump seems to view the One China policy as a bargaining chip that the U.S. can use to get China to cooperate on trade and other issues. Meanwhile, the Chinese Communist Party views the policy as non-negotiable. And while Taiwan may welcome more recognition and stronger support from the U.S., the country/region is at risk if the boat gets rocked too much. In fact, a majority of Taiwanese want to keep the status quo with China forever. Sure, they may not be formally recognized as a state right now, But at least those 1,600 missiles pointed at them aren't firing. So what's next? Is Trump leading the U.S. to war with China? Or is he standing up for Taiwan? And should we just rename the One China policy the Highlander policy instead? Tell me what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching this episode of China Uncensored. Once again, I'm your host, Chris Chappell. See you next time.